Welcome to the Go Slow to Go Fast Lifestyle Podcast, the space where we breathe deeply, live intentionally, and find meaning in the messy middle of life. I'm your host, Kendra Chapman, mom of triplets, busy professional, caffeine lover, and a big believer in slowing down so we can show up fully. If you're a busy human navigating career, family, life changes, or all of the above, you are in good company. Around here, we don't chase perfection. We build rhythms that support clarity and joy. And today we're diving into what it truly means to feel at home and comfortable in our own bodies, even in the midst of constant pressures of the modern life. And we'll be exploring this vital topic with a truly special guest, Joanne Edinburgh. We will unpack the concept of body comfort and talk about what's bringing each of us a little sense of what it means to go slow to go fast, while we walk you through a mindset or a method that helps you slow down and think about what it means to be in acceptance with your body. And of course, we'll share how you can stay connected with both of us as we continue with this conversation. So whether you're listening on your morning commute, doing chores around the house, or sneaking in a few minutes of quiet time with a cup of something warm, this moment is just for you. Take a breath, let the world slow down for a minute, and let's get started. So I want to say welcome to Joanne. Thank you for being here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Looking forward to our conversation. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so excited that you're here. And I know our listeners are going to get so much out of this conversation. So before we get started, do you mind sharing what it means to go slow for you?
Well, I love the name of your podcast, actually. And I think it really is at the root of the work that I do, because I think the only way that we can actually improve our relationship with food and with our body is to slow down. It's such a key piece of making changes in those areas because, relaxation and slowing down is so important to get our body into a good state to be able to optimally digest our food, metabolize our food, and to really be able to understand why we do what we do, which is kind of at the root of the work that I do with women, is to understand, okay, why do we continue to, act in this way when we really want to act a different way? Being able to slow down and look at our beliefs, get in touch with our emotions, pay attention to our body. That is the only way we're going to be able to figure that out. So I love that. And actually, one of my favorite books, which was written by my teacher from my eating psychology coaching training program, is called The Slowdown Diet by Mark David. And so it gets a lot into the work that I do and the concepts that we'll probably talk about. So yeah, I love it.
What would be beliefs around going slow when it comes to listening to your body and being really mindful about what we put into our bodies as far as food and, energy? So can you share a little bit before we get into that about how you started in this space and why you do the work that you do?
Yeah, I think I've always been interested in health and nutrition and wellness. And, I was a social worker for a time. I've done a lot of different things. I've been a yoga instructor. I was a birth doula. So when my kids were in school and I was trying to figure out like what I was going to do next, I found this eating psychology program, which really tied together a lot of the things that I was interested in. And I think for me, like most women, my relationship with food and with my body was not the most healthy. And, I think I spent a lot of time worrying about how I looked and how to change myself and trying to be perfect and trying to find the latest and greatest diet or way to eat or way to exercise, try to fix myself. I had a lot of food sensitivities, so I had really, I would say, a very unhealthy relationship with food because of that, because I was always worried about what I could eat. if I was going to go
Mhm.
somewhere socially or if I was going out to eat, it was so stressful thinking about, okay, I can't eat that. I can't eat that. This isn't going to be good for me. Or I would eat things
Mhm.
that supposedly weren't good for me. And then I would go into that whole guilt shame cycle.
Mhm.
So it was a very, I didn't actually enjoy food, I would say, during that
Mhm.
long period of my life. And when I was able to learn more about the practices that I teach other women, I was able to kind of dismantle that and be able to get to a place where now I would say I really do enjoy food. It doesn't matter what I eat. I try to really enjoy eating when I eat. I try to pay attention and be mindful of eating. And if I don't, that's okay too. And I don't beat
Mhm.
myself up over that. And in terms of my body, I feel like when I was younger, I really had like the more ideal body and I was never comfortable in my skin. I was always
Mhm.
very self-conscious about my body. And now I'm, you know, way more than I probably have ever weighed. And I feel very accepting of who I am and my body. And so I think that's why I do what I do because I want other women to have that experience because every day out in the world, I hear women criticizing themselves and being unhappy
Mhm.
with themselves and worrying about what they should eat and, not doing it right. And so that's really my
Yeah.
passion.
I love that because how many of us out there? I mean, there's so many women that listen to this podcast, and I'm sure there's a few men too, but how many of us have thought, if I could have that conversation with my younger self and just, you know, remind, or just let you know that it's going to be okay. And I'm happier than I've ever been at age, whatever that is, 40, 50, 60. And
Hmm.
it's okay. So the 20 something or the 30 something just needs to hold on and relax and enjoy being in a body that might feel good, have more energy, but maybe take a little bit, just take a minute and breathe and don't take it out on yourself so much.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. But I love that you say that you had that body that, would have been typically, what you would think is a typical healthy body years ago. And now you're more comfortable in your body. So, and I'm
Mhm.
sure there's many listeners out there that feel that way too, or I hope you do. I hope you're having that conversation and that relationship with you and your body a little bit more and leaning into that. But for those listeners out there, Joanne, who are still kind of struggling with body image or have days where they do, what would be some suggestions or thoughts that you would have that you'd want to share?
Yeah, I think it's really challenging because the culture is very
Mm,
difficult in terms of being
yeah.
able to feel accepting of our bodies, right? So, one thing that I think has been very helpful for me and that I work with clients with a lot is, shifting from what you don't like about your body to what does my body do for me, like having that appreciation and gratitude for our bodies I think can really make a difference. And so having some kind of gratitude practice where you're focused on, okay, most people have some things about their body that they actually like, so
Mhm.
start with that and focus on those things as well as what does my body do for me, and I think that can be really helpful. And also, taking a look at when we don't feel good about ourselves rather than trying to push that away. And a lot of times people use food to do that. It's a
Mhm.
very common strategy, right?
Mhm.
Seeing that as actually an important message. If you don't feel good about yourself, okay, your body's just trying to tell you something. So pay attention to that and really try to look at, okay, what am I feeling right now? Why do I feel such shame about my body? Where does that come from? So, whatever it is for you that helps you to kind of get more at the root of what's going on, whether it's journaling, whether it's just like talking into your phone, and if you'd rather speak rather than write,
Mhm.
talking to someone else, I think it can be really helpful because once we can kind of get at the root of why we feel the way we do, that's the only way that we're going to transform that. Just
Mhm.
trying to push it away and pretend it doesn't exist. We know that doesn't really work. but we don't
No.
really want to, most of us don't really want to face those feelings because it's painful. There's a lot of pain
Mhm.
around these issues.
Yeah.
How we were spoken to, how the culture in general talks about these issues. It's not easy.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. I
yeah.
mean, you bring up so many good points that it's either something coming from outside of our body and our self influencing how our thoughts are about ourself. It's either, and we can be judgmental. It's either good thoughts, bad thoughts, whatever that looks like. But it's really the goal is to have that internal dialogue where you are feeling more positive, and it might be different on every day, but the more positive we can reflect those thoughts and think different maybe when it is not a great day, or, you know, choose a different thought and be thankful for what we do have. Like the other day, I overdid it with some chocolate chip cookies because I needed chocolate. Well, I thought I did. My body was telling me I needed chocolate. And so I overdid it on the sugar and the chocolate. But then I didn't feel so great. And instead of being upset with myself, I just, kind of had a little conversation with my body and just said, okay, the next time you want to go for a chocolate chip cookie, we're going to do one and not four because we're not feeling good. And how does that feel? And I would say that's different than 10 years ago where I would be like, oh, that was a stupid choice.
Mhm,
I'm
mhm.
not doing that anymore, but I'm still definitely having those feelings of like, why did I do that? Here we
Yeah.
go again. Yeah.
And I love those opportunities because I think that's where the gold is,
Mm-hmm.
taking those experiences and, not trying to pretend they don't exist, not trying
Right.
to think we're never going to have them anymore because life
Mm-hmm.
happens and we have
Mm-hmm.
all of these strategies for dealing with our stress or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
the reality is food is meant to be nourishing and comforting.
Yeah.
So let's not beat ourselves up about that
Right.
and really just take a look at it and like, oh, that's so interesting. Like I wonder why I did
Mhm.
do that and not judging it as good or bad, just trying to
Mhm.
understand it and shifting out
Mhm.
of that self-judgment to just getting curious and having that compassion for ourselves like, well, of course I did that, that
Right.
makes total sense. And I think sometimes we think that overeating, for example, or eating certain foods is like the worst thing in the world, when in reality,
Right.
it's just like a strategy for dealing with life. And
Mhm.
it's not necessarily good or bad. It's just
Mhm.
that's what we do. And being able to shift, if we want to make changes in
Mhm.
those strategies,
Mhm.
thinking about like, I don't know, just being able to accept where we're at. And yes, like you said, oh, maybe there's some other things I could do when this happens, and
Mhm.
getting really conscious about that. Like, okay, this is my list of things that I do when I'm stressed to nourish me, to make me feel better, to make me feel more grounded, to have more energy. These are the people I like to talk to. So these are the activities I like to do. So that's a lot of the work
Mhm.
that I do with my clients too, is to have other strategies like expand your toolbox, right?
Yes.
And
Right.
not again beat yourself up every time you go back to your usual go-to.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. 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 And, maybe not buying certain things at the store, not bringing it into the house but you also mentioned it is, if you're if you're changing something in your diet and
mhm,
trying to take certain things out and eat a different way, it is hard when you start to eat out. Because you really
mhm,
have to know how to read a menu. You have to know what to ask for. You have to know what to look for. And that it can be anxiety driven. When you go out, you want to be like everybody else and not worry about it and just order whatever. Or do
mhm,
you want to stick to a certain system or routine that you've started? So that can be a difficult space to be in when you're trying to go out and just eat with everybody else.
right.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, I think I have a bit of a different perspective on that issue than a lot of people, especially in the wellness field, because I feel like trying to keep yourself from eating certain foods, and I've been on a long journey on this one. Part of that can is what causes you to want that food more, right? So when you're restricting just like when you're restricting calories, I mean, body physiologically will fight back because we're meant to survive. And when it thinks that we're going into starvation mode, we'll do whatever it takes to survive. So low calorie diets in particular fail always in the long term because they're not sustainable for that reason. We need to protect ourselves from starvation. So that's
Right.
important to remember. But when we're restricting in other ways, the body kind of has a similar reaction. It's very stressful for the body. And just like, you have kids, I have kids. When you tell people not to do something, what do they want to do? They want to do the opposite, right? That autonomy, that being able to make your own decision, not being told what to do is very strong in human beings. So, one of the strategies that I've used more recently and I think is very helpful is to actually be able to allow everything rather
Mm-hmm.
than to think, I can't eat that. I can't, that's bad for me. And get your body to a place where you can actually trust yourself to eat what is good for you. And it could take a while because most of us have been doing this for a long time, right? But I think it kind of takes the power away from those particular foods, whether it's the sugar, the chocolate chip cookies, or whatever, by saying, oh, I can have that. I can have that anytime. I can just have that tomorrow. So why do I need to have it now? Why do I need to have 10 of them? I could have another one in an hour if I want. And then you get to a point where it's interesting because a lot of times you don't necessarily want those foods that you think you do. And maybe you do, maybe you don't. Like, I'm not going to make a judgment on that, but our our beliefs and the way that we think about foods has a huge impact on our physiology and
Mm,
can create a huge stress response when we feel guilty about eating something that actually, can cause us to feel really bad. It may or may not, it may be the food itself. It may just be our thinking about the food. So it's an interesting experiment to kind of play with this stuff. Sometimes when we're on vacation or when we're at a party, we're really feeling good about ourselves and we eat things that maybe on a different day we might have a completely different reaction to. Like sometimes it's different. We don't always react the same way to the same foods. I mean, of course, if you have an allergy or something like that, that's different. That's not what I'm talking about. But, I think experimentation is really important and not thinking, I'm going to do this forever. I'm going to change this thing about the way I eat forever. It's like, I'm going to try it for a few weeks, see what happens. I'm going to try not restricting for a while, see what happens, but so it's, I kind of like it because you don't have to be so serious about this stuff. I mean, yes, if you have some health issues, yes, there might be some things you have to change about your lifestyle. But for a lot of us, it's not even about that. It's more like we think that we have to make these changes, and be very strict and rigid about it. And for some people, that works really well. But I think for a lot of us, that can really
mm-hmm.
backfire. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you think
Yeah.
about that, but it's a different way to approach
Yeah.
it.
I mean, I can say for my high school friends out there, they were for the most part, they were counting calories and I was not, but I was playing basketball and soccer and they weren't as
Mhm,
active. And so, I think
mhm,
it depends on the phase and your activities and what you're
mhm,
doing and maybe what you're craving. Cause I crave salt and sweet. And I
mhm,
know moderation is probably better. I try not to
mhm,
deprive myself because I like what you said. I
mhm,
will overdo it if I'm depriving,
mhm,
then I will just binge. I'll
mhm.
binge a whole thing of ice cream and then
Right.
hate how I feel later. I won't really feel guilty. I'll just feel like I have a stomach ache because I ate
Mhm,
too much.
mhm,
But yeah, I do operate from that not restrictive place, but I
mhm,
also need to be thinking like, why am I craving certain foods at
mhm,
certain times too? Like, because I would think there might be my thinking is maybe there's a deficiency
mhm,
of something, and
mhm.
my body is just saying, this is what you need to help out,
Yeah,
you know? And there's probably some truth to that.
I think that's true. And I
Yeah.
also think it can be helpful to look at like what is that food giving you? Like what need is it meeting? And food meets a lot of needs for us. And sometimes if we aren't getting certain needs met in other arenas in our lives, plays a really maybe too much of an important role. So kind of thinking about, okay, how else can I get this need for, satisfaction, for comfort, for connection, for, whatever it is met, then sometimes that focus on food goes away or it becomes less. There's less of a focus because we've got all these other things meeting our needs in our lives. And, that tends to be what happens. You start to focus on other things. So it's another, and again, always going back to try not to beat yourself up whenever you do turn to those foods or whatever it is, But cravings, compulsions, from my perspective, are often just avoidance of the feelings, because I know for me, I did not learn how to express my feelings. I thought, that was one of the worst things that could happen because most of us felt a lot of shame when we did do that. So we avoid our emotions like the plague. And so our compulsions are like, we have these feelings building up in us, but because we're not very conscious of them and
Mm-hmm.
we really want to avoid them at all costs, we develop these compulsive behaviors to kind of override that and to make us forget about that emotion or whatever it is. So, that's another whole piece of the puzzle from my perspective. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
I mean,
not
it
easy
is,
though. Yeah,
no,
not
it's
easy.
not. Because you have to be able to be ready to do the work and ask
Hmm.
yourself, like, why am I craving these foods? Or why am I eating these foods? Or why do I feel this way about my body? You have to ask yourself those questions and be ready to listen
Hmm.
to whatever comes in.
Yeah.
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 Or work with a coach to help you,
Hmm.
figure out what maybe could be the next step in figuring out those answers. Yeah, no. And I've observed, quite a few friends, I would say, or my husband or myself are friends. There's a few out there that are very body conscious, but they can be very you know, I wouldn't say necessarily addictive, but maybe just very regimented about the
Hmm.
way they eat and the way they work out. And there's that type of person, but then there might be another person who's not so worried about working out continuously and eats what they want. But, you were saying a little bit about like if you go to a party or you go somewhere and when you have that particular food, you feel one way on one day and a different day on a different day, or different way on a different day. Would you say it has a lot to do with your emotion? Maybe what's going on at that time and when you ingest that food, you're digesting it differently than maybe when if you're not having a great phase of life or time of day or whatever. So it really
Yes,
has to do with a lot going on, not just what food you put in your body.
exactly. I think
Okay.
it's not.
Mm.
Yeah, and this is where it gets much more I think it's much more complex than we've been led to believe. Like a
Mm.
calorie is not a calorie is not a calorie. It depends. And our
Right.
physiological state is huge. And I mean, they've
Mm.
done studies on things as, simple as multitasking.
Mhm.
There was a study where they, be playing one thing in one ear and a different thing in the other ear and you're eating and they're measuring your absorption of nutrients, and just the fact of multitasking is stressful enough to the body that you actually don't absorb the nutrients in your food.
Wow.
So if you think about it, like how often do most of us actually eat when we're eating? We're
Mhm.
actually like sitting down, we're slowly eating, we're paying attention to the food we're eating, we're not on our phones, we're not listening to something, and if you can put yourself in that relaxation state, you will be able to absorb whatever nutrients are in that food. And if you don't, if you're stressed, it doesn't matter. The healthiest, whatever we consider the healthiest food in the world, is not going to get absorbed well. And so I think these are kind of the missing pieces of that no one's talking about. It's like it's not a static situation. We're not machines. We're human beings, and there's a lot that happens here. And we have so much emotional connection. Think, especially as women, around food and our bodies. I mean, can you think? I know this happens to me. Like I could look in the mirror one day and then have a fight with someone or have
Mhm.
bad interaction or something stressful happens, and then I look in the mirror again, my body has not changed. Okay, let's assume my body has not changed in a matter of an hour or two. And we are like, oh my God, I look terrible. I really hate how this part of my body or whatever. So it's not,
Mm.
so much is really our perception about things. It's not
Hmm.
like, so yes, I
Yeah.
definitely think that what we eat in our social situations and what's going on in our lives, if we've got a lot of stress, like kind of that low level stress, whether it's from a relationship, from a job we don't
Mhm.
like, whether we're, just having a hard time, illness, family
Mhm.
situations. I mean, it can absolutely impact how we feel about ourselves and how
Mm.
we literally digest our food. And again, not to be so to take those situations and think, okay, this is just a phase. This is the phase I'm going through. There's some things you can control and some you can't. So the things you can control, you can try to make changes, but some things it's not so easy. And just think,
Yeah.
okay, I'm not going to worry about this right now because, a few months from now or whatever, things will be different. And then I can focus on that,
Mm.
so that's another piece of just really giving ourselves a break, right? That
Yeah.
kindness, that self compassion, that acceptance. This is where things are right now. And sometimes we can't do a whole lot about it. And what's important, kind of figuring out what's the most important thing right now. Just eating and nourishing myself is important rather than worrying so much about, oh my God, I didn't get enough protein today or, ate too much sugar or whatever it is that we're worried about. No, I'm not saying that those things aren't important because they can be very important and food absolutely can be medicine but it's so much more complicated than that. And sometimes things that we think are important aren't as important as we think.
That is like eye-opening for me because I'm thinking about, like I said a little bit ago, that regimented, routine-driven person
Mhm.
versus the person that's like, whatever, I'll eat when I eat and I'll eat, what I want. And I'm not saying that like they're like going to look the same, but it's how they feel about the food and what they're doing is really more important than what they're putting into their body. So that kind of does ring true then, because I can think about there are times where I've had a meal. We try as a family to sit around the dinner table and eat together
Mhm.
pretty often. But
Mhm.
the typical American family is pretty busy, and so we're not always going to have time to sit down every meal. But when we do, and I take time to make the meal and I'm in a good mood, the food just tastes better. I can
Mhm.
tell a difference. I can tell a
Mhm.
difference. So it's like all the little things that we need to be thinking about and not just what we're doing while we're preparing the meal, but what we're doing while we're eating the meal too.
Mhm.
Instead of just sitting in front of my computer knowing I have to eat lunch during the workday.
Mhm.
They tell you so many times, get away from your desk, go do something different when you eat in a different space, eat with people.
Mhm.
And so all of that probably has many messages that would go further into that
Yeah.
physiology aspect.
Yeah. Exactly. And, sometimes you just have to do it. It's like, okay, I got a really busy day and I need to eat. So I'm going to work while I eat, and that's okay too. But just being conscious of it, think, okay, tomorrow, do I have even 10 minutes, to just take a short break and just focus on eating and not being doing something else at the same time? So, yeah, it's more like those little changes. It's not having to do it all at once, not always having to do it. It's just being aware and conscious
And going slow. If you
and
can go
going
slow
slow.
and enjoy your meal. Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, we
Yeah.
can't always be in Italy or in an amazing place in Europe or some like your favorite restaurant having an amazing meal, but what if we could have that mindset every time we sat down and had our meal?
Mhm.
If we would maybe we would feel better about what we were eating.
Mhm. Yeah, it's kind of like the body too. Yeah, like it's like taking everything and it's like what can I be grateful for here? What do I appreciate here even if it's not perfect? Like, okay, I just had to whip something together really quickly and I couldn't
Right.
make that really nice gourmet, food that I might like. Okay, well, what did I do? What can I appreciate about this? I think is an important way to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, I mean, it might be woo woo for some people out there, but I had a conversation with Erin Catrone a couple of weeks ago, and she said, like, the water you drink, if you just sit
Hmm.
with the water before you drink it and think positive thoughts and ask for it to give you you need in your body right now. If we could take that thinking and put it into everything else we do with our meal, you know, kind of brings me to, if you are somebody that prays before you eat or does some sort of intention before you eat, like that could probably make the meal even better as well, if that's part of your routine or your values and beliefs.
Yeah, I mean, anything like, again, all of those things put us into that relaxation state, which is really what's important because, it's called rest and digest for a reason. We need to be relaxed when we're eating. So whether it's prayer,
Yeah.
whether it's breathing, whether it's just taking a moment of silence or appreciation. Absolutely. I think that absolutely
Hmm.
makes a difference. And I am a huge believer in like the frequency that we put out. Like there's this whole energy field around us. It's not just
Yes.
our physical body and it makes a
Right.
huge difference. So I really like to focus on like how do you feel? Like as opposed to focusing so much on how we look, which
Hmm.
has its place. I'm not saying it's not important at all, but how we feel has much more of an impact, even in how we present ourselves to the world. Like people want to look a certain way because they want to be more attractive, they want to be more successful,
Hmm.
more confident. Well, actually, that energetic place, of feeling good about ourselves is what is going to get us those things. Because we know lots of people who look the perfect body. They do not necessarily feel great about themselves. They are not necessarily confident or feel good in their body. So, or attractive even. It's like that attractiveness is a lot more complicated than I think, okay, it's been difficult these days using apps to meet people. Of course, you're going to look at someone's two-dimensional picture and make a judgment. But beyond that, when you actually meet someone and talk to someone in person, there's much more to it than our physical appearance. So, you know,
Right.
there's,
Any of you out there have been on a blind date, you know what that's about.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's easy, but, it's
No.
just important to
No.
kind of remember that, like, how we feel about ourselves is critical to all of this.
Absolutely. So you were saying something about was it slow eating method
Yeah,
or
well, yeah, well, the Slowdown diet's the name of the book. It's not really a diet. It's not really a diet. I'm sure for marketing they had to put the word diet in there, but yeah, it's really about all this stuff we've been talking about. Like, how can you focus on being mindful and present when you eat? What about pleasure? Pleasure, how can you really appreciate what it is you're eating? And kind of thinking about all those beliefs that we have about food. And so it kind of gets into all of those slowing down definitely is a big piece of it. There's lots of strategies you can use to actually slow down while you eat. Can you just like consciously think, okay, normally I eat in about 5 minutes. Can I try to extend that and make it last 10 minutes or 20 minutes or something like that? So those kinds of things,
yeah.
taking breaths and being relaxed when you eat. Even if you
Mhm.
don't initially, and then halfway through your meal, you're like, oh my God, I'm like not paying attention at all, or I'm eating really fast. Like to just think about it at that point or think about it afterwards. Like, oh, that was kind of interesting. I noticed that.
Mhm.
So it's like the noticing and the awareness is the first
Mhm.
step. It doesn't mean you have to change everything right away, but that
Mhm.
is like a step to moving in that direction. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of things
Yeah.
you can do.
Right. And that is so hard for some people. I can think of my husband who is, because of his job, he's a retired law enforcement and they had to eat quickly and eat when
Hmm.
they could, and it just they had to be out the door or in their car or whatever. So
Exactly.
he still does that now, and he's been
Mhm,
retired for years, and he's the
mhm,
first one finished, and I'm always like the last one because I spend so
mhm.
much time preparing my food and then
Uh-huh.
sitting down and eating it. And so, it's always this ongoing joke.
Mm.
And if we're out, he always says, I never got my food from the waitress. He always goes back and forth like that. There's nothing on the plate, or
Yeah.
so it's just, there are people out there that eat so fast. I don't even know if they taste their food.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to having that practice to see how that can be different is interesting because sometimes you will choose different foods if you're actually slow and present than if you're not.
Hmm.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Absolutely. This definitely resonates with me and it makes sense. So I appreciate you coming on today and talking about this because I think it really does go hand in hand with how we think about food, our routines around food, and then how we feel about our bodies because of how we
Hmm.
feel about food.
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
It's very resonant to other parts of our lives, like how we eat
mm-hmm,
often is how we live. And,
mm-hmm,
there are lots of messages around our issues around food and weight and body that
yeah,
are just messages. It's just trying to teach us something that we need to, learn. And so I
absolutely.
love that about it because it's something we do
Yeah,
every day.
yeah,
So
it
there's
is.
a lot
It
we can
is.
learn from it.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, there are so many diet fads out there, so many
Mhm.
ways that people think that they can lose weight. And you can lose weight with several of these methods, but you're not going to keep the weight off. And it's really just about where do you feel comfortable in your
Mhm.
body?
Mhm.
Maybe when we were in our 20s and 30s, we were a certain weight, but we had a different metabolism. We were doing different things. And so I
Mhm.
know now that I'm 50, I'm just not
Mhm.
doing the same things and I'm not going to have the same body. And it's okay.
Right.
But,
Yep.
and there are going to be days where I'm going to be like, you know what? Thank you. I appreciate my body for helping me, walk as much as I did or go hiking or, out in the garden. Or, yeah, I'm really feeling that sore, back because, I was weeding the garden a lot, but it's good to feel that because then you're
Mhm.
grateful that you can do that.
Mhm. Yeah.
You've talked a little bit about not worried about how much you eat or what you eat, just thinking about when you do eat what your thoughts are. But is there anything else message wise that you want to share before we let you go today?
I would say, enjoy your food, enjoy
Mhm.
eating, and try not to stress about it so much. But if you are stressed about it or you do have a lot of negative feelings when you're eating, just look at that as an opportunity to dig a little deeper. Think, oh, I wonder why I feel that way. Like it's just food. Food, it's not a moral thing. Like we have this thing about foods being good or bad, healthy, unfelt healthy. It's just food. So you kind of lighten up a little bit about it and also know that it's hard. This is not easy work because we live
Yeah,
in a culture that makes us believe all of these things. But yeah, trying to relax a little more and enjoy when you eat, I guess is one takeaway message.
it's been tradition and I think a human experience to enjoy food with others. And it's a
Hmm.
time to come together and we're all in different phases and places in our life. So it could look different for everybody, but hopefully you can enjoy and relax with
Hmm.
food after listening to this episode a little bit more. So thank you,
Yeah.
Joanne. I appreciate you being here and your time and your wisdom. And I'm going to have you in my head the next time I'm making a batch of brownies or any of my other chocolate treats. And it's okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
Enjoy it. Enjoy the chocolate.
Mhm. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. I might add some icing to my brownies and it's okay. All right. 'Cause it's supposed to be sweet. Life is sweet. So let's make it count, right?
That's right.
Well, thank you. All right, guys, I'll make sure that I put all of Joanne's contact information in the show notes. And let's keep this conversation going. I'll include anything from socials for both of us as well if you want to reach out to get to know Joanne a little bit more and learn more about what she does and the work that she puts out in the world. All right. Thanks,
Great.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Thanks for being here, Joanne.